He and I had a conversation that was about the seven deadly sins and sales. So what happened was I compared it to the virtues because when I started trying to research and remember all about the different sins and what they were, I found the seven heavenly virtues as part of Wikipedia. And then I was looking at that list and I said, oh my gosh, this makes sense. The reason why he was trying to tell me that all sales are made somewhere in the realm of the seven deadly sins. That was his
Pride, greed,
assertion, which I
lust,
understand him.
envy.
I stand what
Yeah,
he's saying, and I do believe he's got a point. And the reason why sold not bought or life insurance is so difficult is because it much more aligns with the virtues than with the sins. So that's why it's so hard to sell.
perfect.
Welcome to the Your Seat at the Table podcast with your hosts, Idea Monkey Mike Maddock and ringleader John Tobin. We're two founders, a serial entrepreneur and $1 billion operator, who talk to leaders about how, when, and why they made their most pivotal decisions in life. Join us as we share wisdom, mistakes, and a few laughs learning from the brightest minds in business today.
All right. Well, lucky me, I get to hang out with my sister from another Mr., Maria Ferrante-Schepis, and I get to do it solo. John had a conflict at the last minute, so you poor souls just to get to hear from me today. Welcome, Maria Ferrante-Schepis.
Thank you, Mike Maddock. It's a pleasure to be with you.
So Maria, oh my gosh, I could spend the whole time talking about how awesome Maria is. Maria is a marketing genius, an insurance genius. She's a musical genius, and she's just plain genius. You're about to find out why. I met Maria when she was working at Prudential, leading marketing, Prudential Insurance, and then got to work with her at Guardian when she was the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer at Guardian. And then, lucky us, she left that industry and we got to work together for many, many years. And so I spent a lot of time with Maria watching her wow people with amazing ideas. And Maria is also an author. She's a speaker. She's a musician. Maria and I wrote this book together, which pretty much describes my college dating career, Flirting with the Uninterested, Innovating in a Sold Not Bought category. I'll let Maria explain that. And she just published her next book, Unfair Comparisons, which I read this weekend. And thank you, Maria, for saying nice things about me and lots of the people that I love in this book. If you've worked with Maria, go get it. It's really good. Even if you haven't, it's wonderful. Again, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Very
Okay, so
happy.
Maria, tell us a little bit about your journey. Where'd you grow up? What'd you do? How'd you start playing music? How'd you wind up in insurance? What happened?
Oh my gosh. It's kind of a long story. I grew up on Long Island in a little town called Seaford, which most people don't know specifically unless they know the towns surrounding it. Massapequa, which is famous for, Joey Buttafuoco, I guess, and maybe more, and like a few other celebrities, and some other towns that were around it. Levittown, which is where the Levitt home was created, and I lived in a home that was of that style as well as it was growing up there. And I you asked me when did I start getting into music? I started, I guess, when I was in third grade or so, when kids start that. But there was a lot of music in my family. My mom's very talented piano player, guitarist, accordion player, and my brothers are musicians as well. So I was kind of around it all the time. And that was always something that I thought I might do for a living, and then later said, nah, too hard, too much work involved. And even for those people who are super talented, it's hard to make a living at it. So I just kept it as a hobby and made decisions in high school to major in things that were more responsible, like computer science, which turned out to be something I didn't really like very much. And having had somewhat of a teenage meltdown in my second year of college, my parents took me home and said, figure out your life, but in the meantime, get a job. So the only company that would hire me without a degree and without any experience was a life insurance company.
Hey,
And
hold on one second.
yeah,
Can I jump in for a second?
sure.
Because you've told me the story before, but I think it would be interesting. You're so successful and you are a great musician. And I think a lot of people right now are having kids that are having meltdowns.
Yeah.
Like the failure to launch, especially young men. And here you are, and I know you to be brilliant. I'm not just saying that. And you went off to college, and after a couple of years, you didn't launch. What happened, and what do you think the learning is for parents today there?
Well, I was suffering from some really serious anxiety, and
Yeah,
it affected my health in a very big way. And what I learned from that, and my mom was and dad were both very smart to say to me, "You have to go get a job." And when I came home from college and I was not doing well, that was the first thing they said, as opposed to stay in, we'll take care of you, because getting a job gave me purpose and
yeah.
it allowed me to use my creativity, at least to some degree, because if I didn't use it outwardly, I would have used it inwardly for not good things. And that was really smart for them to
I
do
think
that.
that's
It didn't
right.
feel right
Yeah,
to me at the time. It felt like, why are you doing this to me? I'm under so much stress and anxiety right now. But they knew what they were doing.
yeah. And so you had real problems to worry about for other people for a second, and I think cream rises to the top. So keep going. I just wanted to hear that because I think there are a lot of parents out there who are faced with right now. I don't think I know because I talk to leaders all the time, like what is happening. Um, and I think your parents' intuition about go out and start doing things was the right intuition. For
It
so many
was.
reasons.
And I never had kids of my own. I happen to be a grandparent now, which is awesome work if you can get it, right? To skip right over, because you marry a guy with adult children and you can get grandkids, and so I'm learning about how it is to be a parent from being in this seat. But at the time, it felt like there was a lot of instinct to try and protect and keep them inside, and then that instinct to say that's the wrong way to do it is really what turned you're a creative person, so if you don't have an outlet for your creativity, you turn it to things that are not necessarily good, and inward is bad.
You Were you doing music then? Because I have so many friends that were saved by a guitar as young people. It was kind of like their angst came out in beautiful music. Think of all the artists who wrote their best stuff when they were suffering. I mean, there has to be something there. Were you creating music during college?
Not
And
creating music during that time, I was not. In fact, I just put it aside for my college years. In high school, I was
uh
doing that, and then put it aside for my college years. And then after I came back home from being away at school, and I started going back to school locally, the the community band, was formed from my high school, the high school community, and so the band director, who was pretty famous for what he did with the band in the Seaford area, he created this community band that I ended up joining again in my 20s and stayed in there for a while. So that brought music back. And then I'm a flute player, so that's what I was doing there.
a
And
flautist.
I started getting serious about it again. And then in my 30s and 40s, I started taking vocal lessons and things like that, and started joining rock bands. So I switched from symphonic orchestra type work to Jethro Tull. Just a bit of a
famous
transition.
for the famous for their flute solos. Really?
Famous, right, right, on one foot.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, awesome. All right, so I took you off track there, and that's what we do together. So you're working
Yeah.
and playing music again, and what happened then?
So
Like
what
what? Let's
happened,
get yeah.
it was I took a full-time job at this little insurance company on Long Island called North Atlantic Life. I didn't even understand what life insurance was. I just kind of knew that it was important because it was a word you heard on TV and sounded okay. I didn't know anything about it. And I got hired as an illustrations clerk, which sounds like something creative, like you're drawing pictures, but it's really not what it is. It's a computer using computers to generate sheets of numbers to show people what the future is going to look like with an insurance policy. And it was 1984 at the time, so the microchip was brand new. PCs were scarce, if anything, even in the business community. But I was only 18 at the time, so I had no fear of computers. So I dove right in, got it going on, and thought I was some kind of genius. But really, I was just, because I was a teenager, I was not afraid of technology. So that launched opportunity. And then I said, I'm going to go back to school. So I quit. And my boss said, don't quit. He said, don't you need a job for money, like on the side, like a part-time thing? And I said, yeah. And so I stayed. And then when I graduated, I figured I'd quit then, but they never let me. It was like Hotel California. You could check out anytime you like, but you could never leave.
Just quick digression, it's the highest compliment. Jeff Smart and Brad Smart, they wrote top grading. And they said the only question you ever ask when you check a reference is, would you hire her back? And the only answer for an A player is, are you kidding me? I've been begging her to come back since she left. That's how you know you have an A player. So, okay. So you said, and one other thing, you said illustrator. It reminds me of the story you wrote about in the book, Christina Harbridge, who took a job in collections and she thought she was getting into antiques, but it turned out she was in a business of collecting money. That it's a good story. Please get the book and read it. All right.
It's
So
also
now
in your book too. That's where I learned it from.
yeah, well, we share people. Christina is one of the great thinkers today. So lucky us. Okay. So then what happened?
So then when I graduated, I got an offer for a full-time job, and I just stayed in the industry. And then I worked there for a total of 6 years, and then moved on to another small insurance company. And by the time I was 28, I was at VP status, which was kind of unusual, but it was because I started so young. Then after that, went to the Prudential. So I went from this little company called Bankers Life of New York to Prudential, which was this huge behemoth, as you know. And for the first 6 months, I was paralyzed. I thought, I don't even know where the work is. I couldn't find anyone that was actually
How did,
doing the work.
how did, so here's an odd question, but I think you'll understand it. True or false? When you were first starting in insurance, it was primarily a male dominated field. True or
Yeah.
false?
Yeah, totally
So,
true.
so how did growing up on Long Island with two brothers help you navigate that?
It helped me to not even really look at whether or not I was different, because it was just, I was there, and it was kind of, I just felt like one of the guys, and they treated me like that too. They bought me a rifle for my 15th birthday. I think they wanted a brother, but they got me instead, but they thought I was fine. It
And I
just
have
didn't really occur to me that I'm different from a gender perspective. I just kind of hung out with all of them.
yeah, I
So
think my experience with you, matches that. I grew up with Ellen, whose podcast partner, John's, wife. She had three brothers, and Um, I think growing up with boys made her unafraid to just confront us with like, are you really saying that out loud right now? And I've seen you do that from stage and in a boardroom. And I think it's stunningly refreshing just to like talk about the elephant in the room, even if it's um, alpha male. Okay. So what's your big takeaway? So you rose to the C-suite in insurance land, and then you decided to leave. Why, and how did you make that decision?
well, it's funny that you say rose to the C-suite, which is true. And what I learned that was not correct was that the higher you rise in an organization from a title perspective, I always thought that equated to the more power you would have to make change. And it actually doesn't. It's the opposite, because the higher you go, the more risk there is when you do that. And when I would try to make those types of changes or assert those types of ideas, the friction became pretty difficult to deal with. And so that is why I made the change, as you know, because I called you and said, "Help! What do you think about this?" And that I really got a taste of what that world was like to be on the outside of that, specifically that there was a discipline around innovation. I always, like many other people, thought innovation was just being creative and having being able to take risks and getting lucky. And it's not that at all. There is a discipline around it. Maddox Douglas was on the forefront of creating the processes and the discipline around that. And I got that taste of it, and I said I want to do that. However, it was pretty terrifying to leave what I had known for, at that time, 25 plus years, and to take that kind of a risk, to work for a company that is in consulting, where the work is up and down, ebbs and flows, as you know. So that was
It's fun.
big change. Yeah. But I got some coaching along the way about making that change. I had a personal coach that I had hired at the time, and she did a whole assessment on me very objectively. And at first she thought I was crazy to make the change. But then after she tested my personality and, I don't know, my blood and my hair, I don't know, she did a whole bunch of things. She said, "You'd be crazy not to do this. You're perfectly cut out for it." And she gave me a whole safety net plan in case it didn't work out.
Yeah,
And
you were
and
very open with me about that when you
yeah.
were in transition. Cause I was like, are you sure you want to do this? It seemed
Yeah.
to me a little bit crazy. I had a sense of what you were making, and I'm like, we can't, we can't afford to pay you what you're making. And that's when you introduced me to this metaphor of the benefits buffet.
Yeah, the
Talk
currency
about that,
buffet.
because currency buffet, and you are, you use metaphors wonderfully, which is why you're such a good speaker and writer. But talk about the currency buffet, because I think it's highly relevant to CEOs today, to leaders today, and especially to young people or people that are leading young people. Currency buffet, what's that?
It is very much more relevant today than it was when I talked about it with you the first time. It's the idea that the way people get paid is in more than just money. So imagine a buffet full of things that you like, and or don't like, for that matter. But things that might be on a currency buffet could be having flexible work hours, being able to work with people that you like, being able to do something that you love that gives you energy, being close to the office if there is one now. There might not even be, not having a long commute, or being able to take summers off. There are an infinite number of things that could be on that buffet, but they're all very individual. So when we are choosing what we're going to put on our plate from the buffet, if it's more than money, if the other things are just as tasty, then the money doesn't matter as much. You know, you need enough to support whatever lifestyle that you want. But at the time, and still, obviously, I didn't have kids to worry about. I had just become single again, and so it was just me.
Yeah, I caught Susie Welsh on Michael Smerconish's show this weekend. And Susie Welsh was famously Jack Welch's, well, no, she was famously the editor of the Harvard Business Review. And then she became Jack Welch's wife, and she now teaches, I believe, at Columbia College. And she was talking about a survey or a study that they'd done about values. And she was on because of Thanksgiving, and family, being with family, isn't even in the top 5. And he's just like, what? And if family is a big value for you, that creates a lot of dissonance. But it's also an insight, because when you brought this currency buffet idea, we started looking at our folks, and they were stressed because, as you mentioned earlier, consulting can be like, feast or famine. And when it
Hmm.
is feast, you are on the road. You're all over the place. You're not, and it's hard. And just think of all the consultants that get burnt to the ground as young people because they go, 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 go. And so with that idea, I remember starting to like pay for landscaping and laundry services and things that actually mattered. It's like, give me more of my time back. So thank you for that gift. Um, okay. Yeah. So you flipped over to consulting land and, um, so now you're on the other side. You're kind of like in the congregation looking at the altar. Again, a metaphor that you introduced me to. Um, so you ask killer questions. What's a question every insurance executive should be asking themselves, but almost none of them are?
Well, I think that the first question they should be asking themselves is, where are my blind spots? And then that leads to other questions. And blind spots are, when I think about blind spots, I think about them in a very long distance futuristic type of way. Not like, oh, am I acting like a jerk in a meeting? Like that. I don't mean that. I mean about the business and about the longevity and the relevance of the business. And as you may have seen in the new book, the one of them which would scare, I don't know, maybe not say scare, it would be more like something they'd laugh at. And blind spots tend to be something that people might just dismiss or laugh at. And one of them would be, what if people stopped dying or lived
Oh, I thought you
almost
were going to go
forever?
with the AI. I thought you were going to pull the AI thread. That seems to be like the
No,
blind
everyone
spot
else
or
is
the
doing that. Why would I
horror
do
show.
that?
The
But
okay, all right.
AI
So
has
people live.
AI has something to do with whether or not people
Yeah.
will
So you're
this
living
it
forever. What are
escape
you insuring
velocity.
now? What business are you in now? No one's dying.
Right. What
Yeah. So
happens
that.
if people stop? Two things that are in there, two trends that and and Elon Musk just talked about this like last week about costless society, or when work is he's calling it when work is becoming optional, but Jeremy Rifkin wrote it in his book called the Zero Marginal Cost Society, and
Mhm.
where goods and services are things that are necessities cost much less or almost zero. So if people are living forever, hitting escape velocity where they'll, have 2 years added to their life for every 1 year that they live, and then nothing costs anything that they need, what do you need life insurance for?
Yeah.
You wouldn't.
It's interesting.
You wouldn't. And
And
so when I say those things, sometimes people will just laugh and say, "Well, that'll never happen," or "If it's going to happen, it's not going to happen while I'm alive." No, it may not. It may or may not. But if you're in the senior suite C-suite position in a company, you have to be thinking about its long distance future. That's part of your job. So it's not something you have to maybe stay up at night and labor over, but it's something that should be in that 5% of the revolutionary quadrant of the innovation portfolio that Maddox Douglas is famous for having invented. That is where there's nothing. There's no question being asked there in that
yeah,
quadrant.
and one of the tricks of innovation practitioners is to take things off the table that inhibit growth. So let's do that. I don't know if you heard, Maria, I'm pretty excited about this. I've been sort of private, but I did win Powerball last week. And so I'm now I don't have billions of dollars, but I do have hundreds of millions. So lunch is on me next time. And I'm looking to start a life insurance company, and I'd like you to run it. So I'm going to start a life insurance company next year. Tell me what it would look like. You can do whatever you want. Money's no option. Tell me what it would look like in things that would never make the cut.
I love this question. I also was believing you for a minute that you had won the Powerball, and I was really getting
No,
excited there. But hey,
you can imagine how I feel about it.
if that happens, I can't imagine you're going to start a life insurance company. Let's just say that. But that's also part of the joke too, right?
It's a
I
health insurance
I
company,
think that's a
actually.
really good question for the industry to think about too. And it's almost like the word life insurance wouldn't even be in there in this world. Because when you think about why the industry was created, when it was because death and premature death had these consequences, financial destitutional consequences that are far greater than they are today, even though they're terrible today too. But back then, entire families might starve to death if somebody with the death of a breadwinner. And today, the it the new version of that would be very much designed around what we feel society's entitled to now, right? What we felt that was entitled to in the 1700s and the 1800s was dignity, basically just basic dignity, not having to live on the streets. Now, what we're entitled to is so much more expansive. So I would see it being built around modern day problems, such as, and this was also in the book, and you remember from 2016 when we were working with the pharma company, and
I
we
remember.
invented this idea called Cure Futures, which is the idea of creating a futures product that would allow people access to the very expensive drugs that are now going to cure diseases that weren't curable before. We see it already, and our client, if you remember, was in the device business, needles and things like that, mostly diabetes related, and they were scared to death of the cure for diabetes, which was coming. And it's here
Yeah.
now. Now it's here.
Yeah.
They were right. They said it was within 6 to 7 years, and now we've got all the drugs, and they're so expensive, and people are getting access to them in all kind of weird ways. But what happens when that cure for cancer comes, for different types of cancer, for blindness, for dementia, for stroke, for all these diseases that we know will be cured? I mean, how much are they going to cost?
It
So
reminds
I would
me, we
create
had,
I would create an insurance company that pooled our resources together to make that more affordable by people paying for them now.
yeah. And since you and I have both been behind the curtain, I think the biggest challenge to many of these ideas is the house of cards of how people make their money now. And like, if you're being paid, like you have these levers of economic levers that are like, well, how do I make money with that? And that's always the challenge. So do you think it's better? Like, you're taking me in a different direction. Since you now own your own insurance company, if you owned a historic insurance company, would you buy or try to create from within that innovation?
You mean buy another insurance company or buy
No,
like,
buy like an upstart in a young entrepreneur. I'm leading you into the portfolio answer, I think,
oh,
because
okay.
there's, yeah. Like I want to do something that's completely, remember we had an intern years ago that was talking about toilets that would tell you if you were sick. I just saw an article that in Japan, you can slide your credit card, pee in a urinal if you're a guy, and it'll tell you what's wrong with you. Like you literally can do that now. So this is 10 years ago. So you say you're in the boardroom and you're like, someone says, hey, what about toilets to tell you whether you're sick or not? Would you go buy that, or would you try to create it yourself if you own that insurance company?
Well, the portfolio answer is the right answer. Looking at all of what's available, because it's these days, if you can imagine it's possible, somebody is working on it. So why start from scratch? And then if you don't find somebody working on it, then start from scratch if that's something that you think has got a there. But the key is really to test and learn. And if it's something that's way out there on the right side of the portfolio, on the upper right, use as little money as you can to learn more. And then on the left side, if it's clear that the need is there, then be investing heavily in the technology that's going to make it happen. There's a young woman that I just met here in Pittsburgh that has created a new type of life insurance company that's all geared around one problem. And that problem for Gen Z in particular, which I did not know was such a big concern, is infertility. And so
Yeah.
she's layered onto a life insurance chassis an option that provides a payout if someone is diagnosed as having fertility issues and they need IVF or other treatments to have a child. And it apparently there's a lot of pent-up demand for this. They don't have it out there yet. She's looking for a company to take this on. It's called Insured by Lotus. And I saw it on an InsurTech contest, and I was so intrigued by this idea because it's finally somebody who has created something around a new need. But lo and behold, she's not from the industry. If she were, she would
Yeah.
have never thought of something like that. Never.
Yeah.
And so that
It's
it's an important thing to start with a problem, not with, "Oh, I have an idea for a type of company that I just wanna disrupt the industry." Some people say that. I wouldn't come at it from that perspective. I'd come at it from the perspective of what is the new need and who has it.
I fired an insurance broker at the age of 27 because of an in vitro issue. And it was a blind spot. Like I was upset that we hadn't talked about it and it wasn't included in this coverage. And I know it's a different idea, but the
Not
link for me
necessarily.
is
Yeah, it's not
the
necessarily.
link for me was, how did you not see this coming from me? Your job is to be looking around corners for me. And I was very upset about it. It's a longer story than that, but it brought that up for me. So thank you. Yeah. It's like you and I both love to say you can't read the label when you're sitting inside the jar. And that's the expertise trap. You know what you know what's worked, you know what people really want, you know what you've tried, you know what the boss wants, what you can afford, And the more you know, the harder it is to see possibility when it walks right in front of you. So people outside the jar see things that you're not. And that portfolio model, I don't want to give it away. Go buy the book, but it's essentially manage your innovation like you manage your own money. You put bets in different quadrants. You don't slide all the money into crazy. You put a little bit in crazy because that's how anyway, I don't want to give it, I don't want to stop talking. I'm going to stop talking about it because I want people to go buy the book. And it's a really, useful framework. If innovation passes your lips and you're a leader, you should know about it. Okay. So crazy question. If you could go back in your early career and whisper one secret about customers that you didn't know, what would it be?
That I didn't know back
So,
then.
yeah,
I would say that I would whisper and say there's a reason why life insurance is sold, not bought. And don't try to change that part. Try to lean into that and understand it better and work with it, not against it.
so your first book was titled Flirting with the Uninterested. Say explain that a little bit more, because that's exactly the point of the title, right?
Well, it's interesting that you are talking about the title, because I'm sure you remember this, that you titled the book. And that title is powerful because it really says it. I was inside the jar, so if I were titling it, it would have been the title that's on the other side, which is Innovating in the Sold Not Bought category, which would be like, all right, it's okay. But it explains what it is, but Flirting with the Uninterested really says what it means. And it's intriguing, and that gives you the metaphor for what the industry felt like it was doing and is doing. And all those years from that time till now, what I learned is that the industry was trying to change it. Maybe I was too. Not maybe. I was thinking, well, we could change that. Can't we make it into something people would want? And the answer is not just, oh, you can't. It's more like, oh, you shouldn't, because there's a reason why this is the way it is. And so now our innovation, once you have a constraint, can be even more creative with that, as you know. Creativity with constraints it's much more powerful than with a completely blank sheet of paper. Look at Apollo 13, right? Roll of
Yeah.
duct tape, couple of other things that you have to fit this into this square hole and get those people down from the ship alive. Pretty big
Yeah.
task.
Yeah. I think there's a whole conversation about why moonshot thinking is so powerful in terms of helping you really, really break things better, and why it's so damn difficult to do if you're running a company. I mean, it's almost like the things that make a company reliable and profitable are and the people that make a company reliable and profitable are the same ingredients that kill it. when it comes to time, it's time to change. It's time to pivot. And, history is full of once famous companies that just couldn't get out of their own way when the world changed right in front of them. And with the way change is happening now, faster and faster, um, it's becoming more evident, unfortunately, because I have friends in that position. Okay, wait. So your next book, Unfair Comparisons, which I read it this weekend because I thought it would be like, bad coming on here and not having read it recently. So what is it? Why is it unfair to compare a life insurance agent with a used car salesman, but it is fair to compare them to a TSA agent?
Okay.
I thought that
So
was pretty clever, actually.
yeah, well, fairness is in the eye of the beholder, right? You can compare anything to anything that you want to do. But why one is more fair than another is because of this idea of the negative demand category. This is the essence of sold, not bought, but we don't really examine it that way. We just say it and then say, well, it's just a fact. Well, why? And economics lessons would tell us that there's 7 or 8 different types of demand for products and services. And the types that people wake up and say, I want, is very different from the type that you need, but nobody is lining up to get it. So demand has to be cultivated. Doesn't mean there's no need. The demand has to be cultivated in negative demand categories. So think of things like gutter cleaning or security at the airport. Like we know we need it, but we're not like rushing out to say, hey, I'm so excited about going through the metal detector today or getting my laptop taken from me. That is just something we know is necessary, but we are kind of annoyed by. And life insurance falls into that category, but cars, even used cars, don't. Cars are things that people want. And they wake up saying, I need a new car, I want a new car or a used car.
Yeah, and I think that like the takeaway for me reading this book, other than I just love, by the way, Gaffigan's one of my favorite comedians, and I love the way you Gaffigan through this book. Why do they keep looking at me? You've got this inside voice that comes out at the end of these thoughts, just like Jim Gaffigan does.
My
And they're
special
funny.
font, right?
I know, yeah, by special font, and I know you. So I know that actually is your inside voice coming out. And I think it's lovely the way you figured out how to uh, get it into the book. I think the takeaway for me was you have to be making the right comparisons to actually have the insight to do something with them. So, for example, with the TSA example, my nose wiggled when I first read it. I'm like, I don't get that. But then you made that point where you said, well, there are signs. You've seen the signs like if you insult or be aggressive with a TSA agent, you will go to prison, which is punitive. If you don't buy life insurance, your family will suffer if you don't have it. It's punitive versus the signs that we are now seeing that I know of because you pointed out to me that what percentage of TSA agents actually used to be in the military. Oh, these people are here to protect and defend me. That's a completely different mindset. And if you're thinking of the comparison the right way, there's an insight and learning for you there. But how many insurance agents are punitive versus, I really care about you. So I think
that the old school were taught to be punitive. They were taught that that's the way you get people to move on decisions is to dangle the negative in front of them and then back up the hearse, as they would say, literally.
Yeah, I had never heard that, but I read it in your book and I thought, ooh, that's inside talk that really lands. I love I'm going to get on to the lightning round, just ask you some questions because we have to be careful. I could talk to you all day if you'd let me. Heavenly virtues versus deadly sins. I love that.
And I love that
you put it in there. I love that. And I love that you put it in the book just because you're like, oh, I've never heard that before. I hadn't heard it either. And flipping the script that way. I don't want to put you on the spot, but talk about it if you want. Otherwise, it's on page 160 of this book and is so worth a read. I should give credit to the person, Ariel Pfeffer. an entrepreneur and life coach from Uruguay, is the person who came up with that for you. So anyway, you want to
Well,
talk about it?
actually, he came up with he and I
Oh,
had a
there's
conversation that was about the 7 deadly sins and sales. So what happened was I compared it to the
Jeremy
virtues
Reinbold.
because when I started trying to research and remember all about the different sins and what they were, I found the 7 heavenly virtues as part of Wikipedia, and then I was looking at that list, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this makes sense." The reason why he was trying to tell me that all sales are made somewhere in the realm of the 7 deadly sins. That was his
Pride, greed,
assertion, which I
lust,
understand him.
envy.
I understand what
Yeah,
he's saying, and I do believe he's got a point. And the reason why sold not bought or life insurance is so difficult is because it much more aligns with the virtues than with the sins. So that's why it's so hard to sell.
perfect. Forgive me. So if you're wondering, as I was, the virtues are chastity, temperance, charity, diligence, kindness, patience, and humility. Um, there's very insightful. Okay, so let's do some rapid fire. You ready for some rapid fire questions? Don't
I
think
hope
too
so.
hard. Just blurt. It's way more fun when you blur. Um, what's more dangerous, an uninterested customer or an overconfident executive?
I would say an overconfident executive. An uninterested customer is just kind of normal, right?
Awesome.
That's like the baseline. That's where we're starting from. The overconfident executive is going to do that person no good.
Which do you trust more, customer data or customer stories?
Stories. Data.
Better, okay, better flirting metaphor, ghosting, breadcrumbing, or love bombing.
Say that again, please.
He's just like, pass.
I'm not sure I grasp that one. Could you say it again? Because I want to answer it.
Better flirting metaphor, flirting with the uninterested, ghosting, breadcrumbing, or love bombing.
Ghosting.
All right, good. What's more valuable, curiosity or certainty?
Curiosity, for sure.
Amen, sister. Favorite band? Ah, I knew that. I can't
So
answer that.
hard, so hard, but lately I think it's the Zombies.
Really
Yeah.
interesting.
I've seen them
Uh,
so many times, I love them. They're still at it, and they look like zombies now, but they always kind of
oh, we'll cut that. Jim's favorite band is the Beatles still.
no, it's the Beach Boys,
The Beach Boys. I shouldn't have known that.
with Beatles, like,
Um,
right there behind it, you know?
your personal superhero power in one sentence.
I believe that my superhero power is connecting dots.
Awesome.
And sometimes
Uh,
they should be connected and sometimes they should not, as you know.
by the way, Maria has a new album out. You started by talking about music. You've gotten way back into music. You're incredibly talented. I've seen you speak and play, and I think it's one thing I know about you is you're always creating something brilliant. And so everyone Google Maria Ferrante-Schepis music and see if you can find her album. Last question. If the life insurance industry were a person, what advice would you give them on their first date?
Is it on a first date with me? Or just
I mean,
anybody?
you can take this anywhere you want. If you want to date the life insurance industry, that's, there's no judgment.
I would say be gentle on yourself, meaning that don't take everything so personally, that this is a journey, and don't expect a very quick reply from the world. This is something that everyone needs to understand and respect, and they won't necessarily understand it and respect it immediately.
Okay, so I want to point something out. One of my pet peeves is people who teach about entrepreneurship at college who have never run a business. It makes me batshit crazy. And the reason is because they have no empathy. They just they get up there and they do case study. They've never had to make payroll. They've never had to tell their best friend they no longer had a job for them. And that lack of empathy cuts me because they just don't understand how difficult it is in the trenches. I want to point out to anybody who's still listening, particularly the people in the life insurance industry, Maria took that question as if she was part of you. She took it as it's hard, it's not easy. So if you're really tired of consultants or speakers who are telling you how to do things with no empathy, introducing Maria Ferrante-Schepis, who has it oozing out of her pores. Maria, thank you so much for
Thank you.
spending time with me. Best part of my week for sure.
Mine
Um,
too, Mike. Thank you.
really fun.